Good morning, everyone. Good morning, guys, and welcome to Shriram's IAS Mission Mains 2023. This is Sanadat Bhardwaj bringing to you the next video session where we have been discussing every single weekend. Let me know in the chat section, guys, if I'm audible and visible. And we shall be discussing, just like every other weekend, we will be discussing important and relevant topic for your mains preparation. Now, in this session, I'm going to take certain more topics and certain topics which were left out in the last class. Make sure that you watch this session till the end. This is going to be a 2.5 long hour section.
Good morning, guys,
And in this session, we will be making sure that your efforts for mains are more robust. Now, this is just a brief introduction about myself, and apart from that, we were supposed to cover abortion rights and the relevance of abortion rights when it comes to ethics. Alright? Make sure to share this session with all your friends because Shriram's IAS is bringing to you a lot of information, a lot of sessions, and a lot of important topics. If you have watched the Chandrayaan 3 session and the class that I had delivered on Unacademy UPSC Articulate, then certainly you would know this as well. Apart from that, you also have certain foundation batch, you also have some optional subject courses that we offer on Unacademy platform. I will be giving that information as well in the upcoming portion of this lecture. In this lecture, I am going to cover topics which are related to ethics, which are related to environment, which are also related to social issues. So make sure that you note them down, every single thing. Apart from that, you have the link for the Telegram channel that is available to you in the description section. So when you go to the description section, you will find the link for the Telegram channel, the link to Shriram sir's profile, my profile on Unacademy platform, certain plus courses and special classes as well. You will find a lot of series that we are running, be it ethics, be it mains answer writing and question discussion, which is being run subject wise. Make sure that you follow all the initiatives because we are working in tandem. There is an entire teamwork which is working for you guys so that you have better and more robust preparation. So your journey is more robust. So we are here to help you guys out in that sense. Alright? Chaliye. Good morning, Rohit ji. Welcome to the class. My voice is not clear. My voice is not clear. Just give me a second. Just give me a second. Let me check. Let me check. Echo sound. Okay. My voice is not clear. My voice is not clear. Just give me a second. Is it okay now? Is it better? Rohit? Let me check. Just give me a second. What about now? Is it better? Rohit? Background sound is still coming. Okay, just a second. Just give me a second, please. Let me check. Just give me a second. What about now? Is it okay now? Is it better? Background sound is still coming. Okay, just a second. Just give me a second. Just give me a second. Is it still not good? Is it working fine now? Rohit? Renuji? Is it working fine now? No, this is something else. Is it still not good? Is it working fine now? Rohit? Renuji? Is it still not good? Is it working fine now? Is it working fine now? It's something else. No, this is something else. Renuji? Is it still not good? Is it working fine now? Is it working fine now? Rohit? No, this is something else. Is it still not good? Working fine now? Is it working fine now? Something else. Just okay, this is something else. Renuji? Is it still not good? Is it working fine now? Is it working fine now? Something else. No, this is something else. Is it still not good? Is it working fine now? Is it working fine now? Just okay. Is it still not good? Working fine now? Is it working fine now? Something else. Just okay. This is something else. Is it working fine now? Is it working fine now? Something else. This is something else. Is it still not good? Working fine now? Is it working fine now? Something else. Just working fine now? Is it working fine now? Something else.
Is it working fine now, Rohit? Could you please let me know if it is working fine? If it is working fine, could you please let me know? Great. चलिए, now let's begin. Is it working fine now, Rohit? Could you please let me know? It was a very weird sound. If it is working fine. Now, see, as far as abortion rights and ethics is concerned, this can be a very good case study. If it is working fine, this case study actually can be used either for GS2 or for GS4. Now, this topic is an all-encompassing topic, and that is why it is very important for us to cover this topic. So, I would, by the end of this topic particularly, give you a question to be solved that you can practice in your own time. This is one practice that we have been following for the last couple of weeks. Now, let me now start with the as far as everything is visible and I am audible as well. Guys, please I want to solve it out. Actually, is there to help us out. Ensure both guys have complete access for GS4. Now, this topic is an all-encompassing topic, and that is why it is very important for us to cover this topic. So, I would now, by the end of this, as far as abortion is concerned, it is a major problem in practice. The United States, the western part of the world, and of course the eastern part of the world, given that it is associated with the concepts of right to life. Now, start with the C. Since the conception, is it echoing now? Now, this topic is an all-encompassing topic, and that is why it is very important for us to cover this topic. So, now, by the end of this, as far as abortion is concerned, it is a major problem in practice. The United States part of the world and of course the eastern part of the world, given that it is associated with the concept of right to life. Now, start with the C. Is it echoing now? Is it working fine? Let me check. Is it echoing now? Working fine as far as my end is concerned. Let me check. Um, Working as far as my end is concerned. Cross check. Just give me a second. Sometimes it is about a second, sometimes it's about a minute, sometimes it's about a couple of minutes. I hope this gets sorted now so that we can continue with our session. Wonderful. Now, let's continue. So I was talking about abortion rights associated with the right to life because in the West, particularly in the United States, the conservatives and of course the liberals, they've had quite a deliberate discussion on this particular topic, and we are going to basically yield on that discussion. The yielding on that discussion leads us to our concepts of ethics, our concepts of human values, and how we actually value human life. Abortion rights have been recently raked up because of the landmark Supreme Court judgment, which allowed abortions up to 24 weeks for all women, including unmarried women. 24 weeks is a very, very long time. It's about 6 months into the pregnancy. And at what stage or at what point do you really consider the fetus to be alive has repercussions with respect to your religion, with respect to your spirituality, with respect to human rights, with respect to your socio-political rights, as well as various other aspects of the society, including the family structure. Now, we will first discuss all the aspects that the Honorable Supreme Court has discussed, and then we'll move on to the kind of questions that have been asked and that can be asked in the future with respect to this topic. Abortion rights and the ethical dilemma and issues relating to women's rights. Number one, whether or not a woman is allowed or is having a right over her own body. My body, my rules, my life, my rules, my life, my rules, wala concept, if you are aware about it, it is more of associated with respect to individualism. The concept of individualism does not really link you or your actions to the collective commune or to the society. It gives you that leverage and that liberal existence where you can, as an individual, decide for your own sake, for your own benefit, what is right and what do you want. So your wants and your desires are taken care of in individualism. Just to give you a brief overview, women's rights over her body, when they are made to be vested within her own body, and rather than having a sense of responsibility towards the society as a whole, and this is by and large, remember guys, it's not just for women. We are talking about abortion rights. That is why we are discussing women's rights over her body. It is also related to men's rights over their body, right? But because it is abortion, it's not associated with men, it's associated with women. That is why we are discussing this to this extent. Now, women's rights over her body are very, a very, it's been a while that it has been in news. We have been discussing this particularly in the context of women empowerment. Right over her body has been advocated as a premise for freedom. And this freedom is not something which is provided collectively or is provided as a class. It is provided as an individual. And that is why this kind of freedom is vested in the body. The difference lies in how you actually are receiving the benefits of that freedom. For example, when I say that I am free to choose what I want to do with my body, it is an individual right. It is not talking about what will be its impact on others, because then it will start to move from individualism towards universalism, towards class-based distinctions within the prospects of your basic fundamental rights or human rights or any other form of legal right. This is something that even our constitution picks up as a challenge, and it provides us to a certain extent with certain deliberations, with certain level of qualifications. We also are receiving certain rights in the individual format and also in the format of a collective commune. That is why this particular topic has not just repercussions for ethics. This is not just relevant for GS4. We are taking up the GS4 angle, but it is also relevant for GS2. So I'll make sure that you guys have access to both the sides of the story so that you can write a very good and informed answer. Now, guys, Rohit, please let me know if I'm audible to you and it's not echoing and everything is working fine as well. Just let me know, please. Huh? Chalo. Now, once we define the premise of freedom in the body, in individual, then we are basically delineating, we are segregating individuals out of the society. अब वो society का हिस्सा है या नहीं है, it is not really relevant. What is relevant is what should be the right of an individual. One cannot force a woman to bear a child in her womb, give birth to a child, if she does not want to do so, and for various reasons. Those reasons have been discussed by the Honorable Supreme Court. Number one, unwanted pregnancies have impact both on physical and mental health. Number two, as far as abortions are concerned, in a country like India, where we are pushing for socio-economic and socio-political development, particularly for the fairer gender, there for promoting gender equality, the right to abortion is vital for gender equality. We will have to make sure, because it should be the choice of the woman, of the girl, of the lady who is bearing the child. Most of the times, it is more often than not considerate that it is either her family or her in-laws or people around her who are influencing her to take that decision. And to that extent, the Honorable Supreme Court has picked up the issue and we have been discussing. Right to abortion should be a part of a portfolio of pregnancy rights that can enable a woman to make a truly free choice whether to end a pregnancy or not. But the issues are still relevant. They are still relevant with respect to the fetus, particularly Article 21, the right to life. If you talk about the cases in the West, for example, the Roe versus Wade case, right? The US Supreme Court case. And there are many other cases with respect to the right of the fetus to life. Now, the right to life of a fetus is a very subjective right, because something which is alive will have the right to life. There, the question arises whether the fetus, whether the fetus is alive or not. Now, if it is alive, when is it alive? To what extent? To what period? Then abortion can be allowed. This is a major concern, and this is something that the entire world, in fact, is rooting for, is trying to understand. Now, right to life is one major issue with respect to the fetus. Then the motherly care. For me, if you talk about the ethical aspects, it is deep rooted. It is not just the pregnancy. It is more than just the pregnancy. It is about a generation, and a generation filled with irresponsible and uncontrollable emotions that actually turn out to be issues with respect to pregnancy and with respect to abortions and many other issues. It is a more deep rooted and a deep seated problem when it comes to ethics. In polity, in GS2, it is far more superficial. I'm going into the details, and that is it. We are talking about right to life of the fetus, right to life, and right to freedom of the lady, of the mother. Now, motherly care, which is basically an unspoken bond that is shared between two individuals, the mother and the child. If you have ever talked to a person who has born a child, who has ever bore a child, who's had a child in her womb, you would talk to her and you would notice that there is a sense of connection, which is not a worldly connection. It is not something that exists between friends. That connection that the nature creates is completely different from what we actually perceive. It is something which is very closely, and I'm talking about it with due diligence, something which is very closely related with a host and a parasite. I know what I'm talking about, but just like the parasite is eating out of the host, the child within the womb is eating out the mother and is taking all the nutrients that she's taking for her own health. The child is taking it from the mother. And it is at that point that the mother develops a connection, a very strong emotional connection, and starts caring for that particular individual inside her womb. And when that happens, when that motherly care happens, it is at that point that this entire, otherwise, it should have been categorized as a parasite host relationship, but it is not, because of the love and the care that the parents, particularly the mother, provide to that bond. The connection that is conjoining these two lives, that connection is not just a media of flow of nutrients, it is also a media for the flow of emotions, love and care. And that is why this connection becomes stronger and stronger every single day, every single minute. By the time the pregnancy matures, by the time you have to give birth, at that particular point of time, it is at its peak. It is at its peak. And that is why many mothers and mothers around the world are able to conjure entire strengths to give birth. If you know the process, then you would know how painful it is. Now, this motherly care is relevant, of course, for GS2 as well as GS4. Why do I say it is relevant for GS2? GS4 में तो समझ में आता है, लेकिन GS2 के लिए particularly relevant है इस वजह से, because when you talk about motherly love, this is a very strong human connection. This is the purest forms of human connections that you can find in the world. The purest ones. There is nothing that the mother expects of a child apart from it being healthy, happy, and prosperous. And yet, she's giving away a lot of nutrients, she's giving away a lot of care, love, support. Not in lieu of anything. Not in lieu of anything. And that is where the basic premise of humanism and humanity comes into picture. Because when you talk about abortion, you are actually talking about that connection being severed. That is something that is very rarely talked about in the courtrooms, in discussion rooms. The impact that it will have. We think, as a matter of right, when we go for abortions, it is going to be a much easier life afterwards. It is not. There are multiple complications which are related to the health of the mother itself. There are multiple health related complications, but I'm not talking about those health related complications. I'm talking about the mental state to have severed. Imagine this. And I'm exaggerating right now. I'm not going into the details of the right to life, whether or not at 6 weeks, whether or not at 4 weeks or 3 weeks times, or 1 month, 2 months, 3 months trimester, first trimester, or at what point life actually exists in the fetus. I'm not going into that debate for now, for a very short time. Understand this. Imagine that it was something which was living inside a person, and it was a human being. And when you sever the ties, you are actually killing the human being. How, if I were to correlate it to anything else, it would be correlated with, of course, homicide or culpable homicide, or with respect to what you call as murder. Murder is basically a special class of culpable homicide. When you try to link it with culpable homicide, imagine the impact of someone killing someone, or imagine the impact of someone dying in front of someone. The psychological impact itself is huge, and that psychological impact translates itself into socio-political phenomena, and those socio-political phenomena will actually create a society which is bent towards the wrong side, where killing is a common phenomena, where maybe not killing, culpable homicide is a common phenomena. You call these societies as ill societies, or say war stricken societies, or maybe societies which are born out of illegal activities. There are societies in the West, for example, if you talk about the United States, the way that killing a human being was justified on certain grounds in the past. I'm talking about the wild, wild West situation. The way it was justified is something which really gives you chills to the core, because the killing of a human being has a psychological impact on another human being, even if that another person is a serial killer, right? Coming back to this point, where if we are going for abortion, will it not have an impact on our physical health and mental health? So, with this example, I hope you understand there will be an impact. Even if this is my body, my rules, or my life, my rules concept, still it will have a physical mental impact on you. Abortion itself will have an impact, right? Now, with respect to the society, just checking if it is working right now or not. Great. Now, as we were discussing, let's proceed further into our discussion. Just give me a second. Let me open up our chat. There are, you know, good days, there are bad days, and there are tech days. Today, we are going to learn about what kind of technical issues can disrupt the class, right? So every day is a learning, but particularly for UPSC aspirants, every single day, every single moment of your life, you will be learning about new things and fresh things will come to you. Now, just make sure that everybody is on board, join in fast. All right. So we are live back again. We were talking about the issues with respect to the society when it comes to abortions. Of course, we have, as we have discussed earlier as well, the life that any individual holds is not just of his or her own. It is, of course, for the state as well. The state's responsibility of valuing each life is to be considered as a point. Now, when you talk about state's consideration or state's responsibility towards rights, this actually is something that is coming from the point that we have a very legitimate and even legitimized through the constitution social contract with the state. If we did not have that social contract, what is the existence of the state? And what is the responsibility of the state? Why does the state exist? We have discussed such questions and such topics in the previous classes. Make sure that you have watched it in the previous classes. अगर नहीं समझ में आता है तो please पूछ लीजिएगा. But the responsibility of the state is quite genuine. Just give me a second. Let me just cross check if everything is working fine. Just give me a couple of seconds, please. Only a couple of seconds, please. Great. Everything's working fine. Let's proceed. Now, as far as the responsibility of the society towards every single life is concerned, as far as the right to life is concerned, it is not something that the state has to basically provide to an individual. It is something that vests within that individual by the virtue of the fact that he or she is alive. And that is why it is the responsibility of the state to value that life, to make sure that this life exists and coexists with other lives in a more productive and a more social way. Inclusion of all when it comes to abortion, it should not become a mechanism of social control for avoiding appearance of differences or disabilities. It should not be a process to weed out or to find out about the gender of the fetus, and then to cull half of the breed. And it should not be based on certain premises. It should not be based on certain agendas. Abortion should something be which is associated to that individual to be able to peacefully live within the society. Further, when it comes to society, it is always about giving better life for existing children. Many a times it has been seen that there is a balance that we have thought of creating when it comes to those who are alive and those who are about to be born. There is this question that comes in the interviews many a times, and it is with respect to one joke as well, which is very gender demeaning, that I don't want to share for the same reason. But there is this question that comes where if you are driving down the line and down that lane, down that street, you are on a very high speed within the limits, hopefully. You see an old person, you see a child, and you see a pregnant lady. Whom would you hit? Of course, you hit the brakes, that is for sure. But if the brakes are failed, what would you do? Of course, you can use the handbrake as well. But if that is also not working, what you can do, you can actually lower down the gears. That can also work for us. But what if the gearbox is broken? What if you're just running down and it's not possible for you to act within the friction of a second? Then it is said that generally in practical situations, and it's not demeaning any life, in practical situations, it is said that you go towards the elderly. You drive in the lane where it is the elderly who's standing. This tells us something as what we actually value when it comes to life, or whose right to life is more or is broader when it comes to extreme situations or extraneous circumstances. This is where we realize there is a difference in the right to life of every single individual. And it is the duty of the state and it is the responsibility of the state to take care of every individual's right to life, because life as such is a bubble. Life itself is a bubble of rights, if you notice. And that bubble is smaller for certain individuals, bigger for others. This responsibility vests on the state. Inclusion of all when it comes to abortion, because abortion is not a mechanism of ensuring individualism within the social setup. Because from the point of conception to the point of becoming an old person, it is not the individual who is actually creating his or her own life. It is the society, including the parents, including others, who are pushing for creating that life. And that is why, and they are rooting for it, they are providing support for it. It is not just the society at large, it is, of course, the state as well, which is providing you with certain effective ingredients that ensures that you live a quality life. And that is why your life is your own to take care of. It is, of course, for your family, it is also for the society at large, and of course, the state. That is how lives are intertwined. This, as a matter of fact, gets muddled up when it comes to abortion. So, what are the arguments that were put up against abortion when it came to this case that the Honorable Supreme Court had heard? Number one, it is not viewed by some of liberating. Some people do not consider it to be liberating, but is a way for society not to cater to women's needs, where abortion as such is not the problem. It is the conception, it is the point where the child was conceived. Because if it was conceived, then certainly that child was supposed to be born. Not every child, not every single relationship where there is a process of conceiving the child is based on love and support and care. That is where the problem arises, because abortions should be allowed in certain cases and should not be allowed in certain cases. That should and should not debate was taken up by the Honorable Supreme Court. And it has been taken up in the recent past quite a number of times to delineate the law on abortion. It is not something that is liberating, but it is a way for society for not to cater to women's needs. Then certainly that abortion is not what you are expecting it to be. It is not ensuring women's rights. It's not ensuring the socio-political existence of one gender in the society at par with the other gender. We think that abortion is that, but is at many a times it becomes a scapegoat where we stop discussing the actual and real problems and we start looking for easy ways out. Women don't need free abortion access, but their needs for financial and social survival as mothers are what they need for equality. If you talk about the Western society, particularly, you have unmarried women, you have unmarried girls giving birth to children. No doubt there is a lack of population or lack of human resources in those countries, and that is why they promote having or bearing a child. They provide for financial support. In a country like India, where we have a lot more, many more people, 1.4 approximately billion people, in a country like India, as densely populated, as humongously populated, it becomes very important for us to understand it is not just about numbers, it's not just about figures, it's more about how we deal with women as a part of the population. One, inexpensive, readily available childcare is not present. A workplace or a school that acknowledges the needs of mothers is redundant. Providing flexible scheduling and maternity leaves is not there, particularly when India is the leader when it comes to the informal sector. In the informal sector, there is no employee benefits. Otherwise, to give you an example, just to give you an example, we are a part of informal sector. Teachers that you study from, they are a part of informal sector. Compared to someone who is, a part of any company or a corporate sector, for example, these individuals, they will have access to employee benefits, they will have access to employee health insurances, their family will have access to employee health insurances. We will not be having those benefits. EPF, PPF, and whatnot. So, informal sector, particularly in a gig economy, undermines the rights of a lot many individuals, including the rights of mothers. Many girls, many women who were bearing a child, they went on maternity leave and then were never asked to come back. Flexible scheduling is not available in India. This rule and this law, it is, and as a matter of fact, a law. It is a matter of fact a law. This law is implemented to the remotest extent in certain companies and in certain ways which suits the corporate life. State support that can help reintegrate a woman into the workforce is very limited. The the scheme that the government runs, the Matra Vandana Yojana, and various other associated projects that the government runs, provides financial support to mothers, but in a certain way. And that way is not really user friendly. If you look at it, it is very difficult for a rural mother, a mother who is from rural areas particularly, it is very difficult for her to even fill up the form. The conditionalities are so difficult to fulfill, and that is where the problem arises. So it is not just the abortion, it is also all these aspects which are associated, closely associated with abortion. As far as India's stance is concerned, we, through the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Act of 2021, we have ensured that expectant mothers exercise self-determination in welcoming the new life to their homes in a more robust way. We, for one, considerably considering ourselves to be a very conservative society, we, for one, are probably the leaders when it comes to abortion rights. Abortion can be performed up to 24 gestational weeks or 24 weeks of pregnancy on certain grounds. If it risks the mother's life, then it is not allowed. And of course, if abortion creates a risk on mother's life, and if pregnancy creates a risk on mother's life, then abortion is allowed. Mental anguish, rape, incest, contraception failure, or diagnosis of fetal abnormalities, these can be certain grounds on the basis of which even up to 24 weeks, even up to 6 months of pregnancy, the abortion is allowed in India. This is the legal stance as on today. It is a liberal achievement over countries where you consider the Roe versus Wade judgment in the West, particularly when it comes to circumstances of sexual abuse or incest or rape or any related crime. What is the problem here, and how should we move towards a better tomorrow? Number one, we need to respect for patients' autonomy. The fact of the matter is, it is more or less the family which is trying to influence the decision. That should not happen. Number two, non-maleficence, where you should not harm any living being. Non-maleficence basically talks about how, as an individual, you should not act in a way which would harm other individuals, harm other human beings. When it you when you're considering all these, all particularly the non-maleficence point, you start considering the impact, the socio-psychological impact of abortion on the mind of a lady, of a girl, of a person. आजकल पर्सन बोलना पड़ता है, जेंडर फ्लूइडिटी जो है एक मेजर फिनोमेना बन चुका है. Then beneficence, which is basically the beneficial care. To what extent the beneficial care is available for the pregnant mother, for the expectant child. And of course, justice. Justice as a component comes into play, particularly when it is something or some situation where you have mothers being either a victim of rape, incest, sexual abuse, or any of the other kinds of crimes relating to women. The Indian Penal Code from section 375, 376, and around all those sections talks about in detail what and what not constitutes rape, what not constitutes unnatural sex, and what not, and what constitutes sexual abuse or physical abuse. You follow that definition. I would recommend each and every student, this is a homework for everybody, to go to the internet, find the Indian Penal Code Bare Act, read section 375, 376, and all the associated sections of 376 and 377 with the latest amendments and with the latest developments. If you do this, you will have a deeper understanding of women's rights. You will understand what constitutes a rape and what not constitutes a rape, what constitutes unnatural sex and what does not. When it comes to the basic definitions, if you know the basic definitions, then you can more freely talk about justice, you can more freely talk about non-maleficence. Because once you define the crime, once you define the reason behind abortion or the reason behind pregnancy, then it is easier for you to delineate the right of the mother as well. जब आपको ये पता चल जाएगा कि किस कारण से, किस वजह से you have the right being infringed, then certainly you will be able to delineate the right itself in a more deeper sense. Then the dilemma of abortion has overlapping issues. They are from legal, medical, ethical, philosophical, religious, and human rights related matters, and it should be analyzed from all these different perspectives. There cannot be any hard and fast rule over abortion. It should not be based merely on the time period where abortion should be allowed and should not be allowed. It should be considerate of the aspects of human rights. When it comes to human rights, the rights of the mother and the child both should be considered, and based on that, you should come to a conclusion. Of course, religious rights should also be considered. Religious aspects or religious realm of this issue should also be considered, given that your existence as an individual is also based on your identities. Your identity is also, one of your identities is also religious identity. So उस चीज का भी ख्याल रखना है. Philosophical aspects, to what extent do we value human lives? Is it ethical or not to kill a human being inside the womb? Is it or is it not murder, or is it not euthanasia, which is of course not active euthanasia? You are and certainly not voluntary euthanasia. You are not seeking the the consent of the child per se, or of the fetus, certainly. And is it okay to ask the mother, is it okay to ask the mother alone for abortion? Because when it comes to ethical issues or when it comes to philosophical issues, my life, my rules, hashtag works fine. But when it comes to pregnancies, the mother who's bearing the child is not the only one who's associated with the child. There is some form of emotional connect or some form of connect that every single individual around her has with the child, because it is not just her responsibility, it is the responsibility of the society that she lives in to make sure that the child that she is about to bring into the society, this is basically a phenomena which we have picked up from our tribal existence, where the child is basically another hand to the crowd, where the child actually is someone and some, let's call it a thing for now, something which actually adds value to the overall tribal existence or the overall social existence of the entire commune. And that is why it is now not perceived in that sense, given that we are more nuclear families, we have more or more and more individuals picking up pregnancies later in their lives, for example in late 30s, in the mid 30s, or even sometimes in 40s, right? We use many contraceptive technologies, we use many techniques, we use IVF, we use test tube concepts, we use three parent baby concept, and many more. The problem is not with respect to the technologies, the problem is also associated with the fact that how we perceive bringing a child to this world as. There cannot be any hard and fast rule over what is allowed in abortion and what is not. So before we move on towards the next topic, let me give you a question that you can ponder upon and you can write down an answer. All right, I'm writing down the question here. I don't want to keep it simplistic. I want to keep it to the extent that it is UPSC worthy. So let's do that. Discuss the significance of values in not in need of them. Discuss the significance of values to create a more socially inclusive environment for expectant mothers, question mark. Do values have the ability to produce the incidence of abortion? So this is one aspect, in one way, the question that can be asked. The other way is from the premise of women's rights. Abortion rights tend to limit the tend to limit the body of rights for women to the body itself. Comment. So this can be another type of question that can be asked. All right. Chalo. Now let's move towards the next topic. Livestock sector and role of women. Today is more or less like a Women's Day because it's almost a number of topics. आगे भी आने वाले कुछ topics के अंदर I will be discussing various aspects of women. Now, when it comes to the International Day of Rural Women, the October 15th, ये पिछले साल होके निकला है, we should recognize the role of women, particularly in livestock rearing. Women, it was, I think, the report from 2015-2016 by the ILO, International Labour Organization, and it was talking about the female labor force participation rate. Female labor force participation rate for rural areas and also urban areas. While for urban areas, it was around 25 to 27%. That means only 25 to 27% women from working age, they were actually working, they were employed, whereas in rural areas, it was around 36 to 37%, somewhere around that. So in rural areas, the labor force participation rate of females was higher as compared to urban areas, which is quite the opposite situation when it comes to our basic understanding of rural areas and urban areas. And it was because in rural areas, many women are actually associated with farmland activities and farm related activities or allied activities of agriculture as a part of family labor or as a part of the entire cottage industry that the villages are running. So, particularly in the livestock sector, let's understand their role. Let's understand the impact of growth in the livestock sector or the impact of livestock sector on the lives of women in rural areas, particularly. On the on 15th of October, which is the International Day for Rural Women, we had recognized their role in the livestock rearing. It was basically to include women in all facets of livestock development, and be it the care, be it breeding, be it veterinary care, be it extension services, training, or access to credit and markets. So basically, how to use the livestock sector or growth in the livestock sector to ensure that women empowerment happens in the rural areas. Livestock sector is one of the most rapidly growing components of rural economy. It is by and large, after the fisheries sector, the the most growing sector in the agriculture component of India's economy. Now, if you talk about the values in figures, it is accounting for 5% of national income, 28% of agriculture GDP as of 2018-2019. This data, of course, will change as soon as new data comes up, but this data is not just from India, it is also something which is an international level data. And in the last 6 years, we have seen the livestock sector grow at almost 8% at constant prices, while the crop farming grew by 2%, only 2%. Now, we have seen studies which have shown that rural households that own livestock, where women are invariably engaged in animal rearing. अगर अगर the male members of the family, अगर वो जाते हैं खेत में, अगर वो fields में जाते हैं, तो women of that family, they go to the areas and basically sheds where livestock is kept, and they help in animal rearing. They are engaged in animal rearing activities. It is widely recognized, and in fact, majority of women workers, they are engaged in agricultural activities in rural areas. 72% of women, which are women workers, they are engaged in agricultural activities. उसके अलावा भी इंडस्ट्रियल एक्टिविटीज होती हैं, उसके अलावा भी आपकी अलग अलग एक्टिविटीज होती हैं, सर्विसेज सेक्टर की एक्टिविटीज होती हैं. सो ओनली 28% of the women who are working in rural areas, they are associated with all those activities. Otherwise, 72% are involved in agricultural activities. Now, this can be considered as an underestimation. For example, around 12 million rural women, they are workers in the livestock raising segment. This is estimated based on the employment and unemployment survey of 2011-12. But when it comes to augmented definition, it is estimated that somewhere around 49 million rural women, they were engaged in livestock raising. 49 million. In fact, the National Livestock Policy of 2013, number one thing which is relevant for a prelims examination is the fact that you have a National Livestock Policy. That is something that you should know. Of course, it is aimed at increasing the livestock production and rightly states that 70% of the labor for the livestock sector comes from women. This has been accepted as a matter of fact in the policy itself. One of the goals of the policy is women empowerment. क्या चाहिए अपने को? Women empowerment, है ना? Just a second. Now, what are the core problems? Where does the problem actually lie? The core problem actually lies in the hidden agendas, and which is not really visible to the policy makers. One of the reasons is the lack of gender disaggregated data, because we do not collect data in a gender disaggregated manner. Segregation of data on the basis of gender is not available in the agriculture sector itself, and if it is available, it is only available to a limited extent, and the effectiveness of that data and the authenticity of that data is still questionable. Number one thing, recent employment surveys, the unemployment surveys like the periodic labor force survey, they fail to collect data on specific activities. वो broad contours में rural areas, urban areas देख लेते हैं, but detailed नहीं है. So it basically undercounts the women who are in the livestock economy. Number two, the reach of extension services to women, they remain scarce. It is, what is extension services? This word I have used in my sessions, particularly. Almost every other session I have talked about extension services. In fact, I read about extension services about a decade ago, and ever since it has had an influence on my approach towards rural development, towards agriculture related developmental activities. Extension services, let me explain this to you. Extension services are those services where you have either the universities, the institutions of knowledge, or state agents coming from the state. State, not the prant, not the rajya, but the state as a whole. So the state has agents which provide accessible and affordable, of course, free of cost, and more attuned to the real life situation information to the people who are looking for developmental activities. For example, if I was a farmer, I do belong to a farming community, but if I was a farmer, then I would have had access to this information through the एरियाज एंड यूनिवर्सिटीज अराउंड मी. तो वो आते मेरे फील्ड पे मुझे समझाते कि कितना मुझे वीडीसाइड यूज करना है, what kind of the product is more suitable for me when it comes to fertilizers, what kind of water supply do I need, what kind of crops should I be growing, what kind of activities should I take up apart from farm related activities so that I can enhance my income. This is extension services. Extension services basically extends the existence of the state, be it through land grant universities. For example, in 1904, when it was started off in the United States, the Smiths Act and various other acts, the land grant universities, LGUs, the land grant universities are those universities basically which were granted land by the state. Now, if you have been given lands, if you have been granted lands, then you will have to take care of those granted lands. And all those farmers and tillers and peasants who are working on that land, it is your responsibility now to take care of those individuals. So it is on that basis that extension word was associated with these services. The concept of extension services is based on the fact that it is the responsibility of the state to take care of every last mile individual. और वो कैसे करेगा स्टेट? थ्रू एक्सटेंशन सर्विसेज. नाउ एक्सटेंशन सर्विसेज रीच टू women livestock farmers is very scarce, is very limited. Further, as far as the 2021 data is concerned, according to official reports, 80,000 livestock farmers were trained across the country. We have no idea how many of them were actually female farmers. महिलाएं कितनी थी ये नहीं पता है, because gender disaggregated data is not available. No information on how many women were there is available. 15 lakh new Kisan credit cards were issued. They were provided to livestock farmers, but उनमें से कितनी महिलाएं थी कोई डेटा अवेलेबल नहीं. The problem is not just at the core, it is also at the superficial level where we are not acknowledging data, where we are not picking up data. Number four, we do not, as you know, we talk about women livestock farmers, they lack technical knowledge, they lack skills with respect to the choice of animals that you should be breeding, and of course, veterinary care as well. So, that of course will remain a major problem. Then village studies have shown that women are not aware of the composition and functions of dairy boards, the men exercising decisions, even in women only dairy cooperatives, you see men taking decisions. There is a concept in Rajasthan, in Haryana, and many other parts where Panchayati Raj institutions are actually existing in the real sense, not in the showbiz sense. So पंचायती राज institutions के अंदर there is a concept called सरपंच बहू. In many constituencies of these panchayati raj institutions, the seats are reserved for women. In fact, one-third seats in majority of the cases are reserved for women. अब इस one-third set of seats के अंदर how many women by virtue of their political existence do they enter into politics? More often than not, it is seen that it is the daughter-in-law of a sarpanch, an ex-sarpanch, or an ex-politician or a politician who is going to sit on the seat of the sarpanch, and it is the person, the male from the household of that sarpanch or that lady sarpanch or that female sarpanch that is the person who is running the show. It is like, sir, बोल वो रहे हैं, शब्द हमारे हैं. That dialogue from Three Idiots, that iconic dialogue, that speech of Chatur Ramalingam, and after that, that iconic dialogue. है ना? ये वो वाली situation है. So actually, it is more often than not seen that it is the men who are exercising decisions rather than women. Even if it is a women only dairy cooperative, even then. Further, Further, the voice of women from landless or poor peasant scheduled caste households, it is very rarely heard. The aspect of socio-political voice, the concept of providing voice is a very deep-rooted concept that I have explained even in accountability. If you go and check out my page on Unacademy platform, you would see that I have discussed accountability, and there I have mentioned the concept of voice and exit. What is the difference and what does it mean? In सब चीजों की discussion मैंने की हुई. Make sure to check that out. All right. If you have any doubts, voice to give you a good afternoon, Vineet ji. Krishna ji, welcome to the class. I know, आपका नाम मुझे मालूम है. I know. Welcome to the class, guys. Now, as far as the concept of voice is concerned, ये जो voice है, जैसे कहते हैं ना किसी को आवाज देनी, किसी की आवाज बुलंद करनी है, that is the concept of voice. Voice in accountability basically talks about, it is a technical concept. ये कीवर्ड है, टेक्निकल वर्ड है. इसको सिर्फ और सिर्फ जिस तरीके से मैंने आपको एग्जाम्पल के तौर पे बताया उसी सेंस में मत देखिएगा. ये एक टेक्निकल कॉन्सेप्ट है जो पबैड के पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के स्टूडेंट्स हैं वो जानते हैं. बट फॉर अदर्स you can use it in your general studies as well, because when you give voice or when you are able to hear the voices of others, आसपास अपने लोगों में जब आप किसी की आवाज को बुलंद होते हुए देखते हैं, when you see that their voice is being heard not just by others but also by the state, it actually emboldens accountability. वो accountability को strengthen करता है. Why does it do so and how does it do so? It basically does it on the basic premise that once you start speaking, जब आप बोलना शुरू करते हैं उस point of time पे आपके पास एक level of confidence आता है in the society that now you can also ask questions. On that basis, on those grounds, जवाबदेही, accountability of the state towards the citizens gets emboldened. ऑलराइट, सो दिस इज द बेसिक प्रेमिस. हमने ये समझा कि लाइफ स्टॉक रेयरिंग के अंदर, लाइफ स्टॉक फार्मिंग के अंदर women का क्या रोल है. We understood what can be done, what is the problem, what is the role, and how should it be treated. हमने सारे एस्पेक्ट्स अब समझ लिए हैं. नाउ वी कम टू the way forward, what should be done. Number one thing, we need efforts to correct the gender biasness of data. अपने को एक बेसिक आइडिया ये होना चाहिए कि हमारे पास women livestock farmers kitne hain. We need to increase their capacity so that they can meet their strategic needs as an individual and as a collective community. We can also promote cooperative farming. Women's labor is critical to livestock economy because otherwise it is very difficult for the male members of the family, of rural family, to take care of livestock economy. It follows then that women should be included in every stage of decision making as well. वो 1/3 और 33% रिजर्वेशन इन दी पार्लियामेंट फॉर वुमेन अभी तक आया नहीं. हर कोई बात करता है, हर कोई प्रमोट करता है, बट कोई ला नहीं रहा फॉर वेरियस रीजंस. एंड दैट इज समथिंग दैट वी शुड बी अंडरस्टैंडिंग, दैट इफ इट इज नॉट पॉसिबल फॉर हायर एशेलॉन्स, अगर मैं पार्लियामेंट में उस चीज को इंप्लीमेंट नहीं कर सकता हूं, देन एटलीस्ट एट पंचायती राज इंस्टीट्यूशन लेवल्स और एट द कोऑपरेटिव लेवल, the cooperative economy and the cooperative rural economy component level. At least at that point, women should be incorporated in the decision making process. That has not happened. That should be happening. All right. There are 7 important pillars of women empowerment. Number 1, decision making. If the decisions of females is taken by men or by male members of the society, then they are not really empowered. Even if they have access to employment, access to knowledge, they are not able to take decisions. For example, I'll give you an example. अगर घर में लड़कियां खुद से अपना प्रोफेशन और वोकेशन नहीं चूज कर पा रही, and it is the male members who are suggesting her to do something, it is not women empowerment. Even if she excels in that field, suggestion is one thing, but this should be her decision. हाँ, नाबालिग है, if she is underage, then certainly it should be under the guardianship of the parents and or the guardian of that individual. But otherwise, for example, whom to vote for, it is basically considered, and Krishna ji, you would of course know this and you must have seen this around you. I have seen this around me, not in my household, but in other households around me, that it is the male members who tell the female members who to vote for. The basic political right, the expression of democracy, where half of the population is telling the other half of the population whom to vote for. And of course, this is one more thing that we need to understand. ये एक political data point हो जाता है, data set हो जाता है when you have more and more of females coming out and voting. The political parties, to a certain extent, want that to happen to disrupt the political processes otherwise happening, and sometimes they use it for their own benefit. So yes, decision making, access to knowledge, then their own self-esteem. How strongly, how confidently you care about your own self. आपकी खुद की जो primal existence है, is it based on someone else's support or is it based on self-esteem? Further, financial stability. How do you have financial stability? Through credit facilities. Livestock services, of course, is a part of extension services, social support, market accessibility, and asset ownership. More often than not, it has been seen that asset ownership for females, it is not just for the livestock sector. It is also for the urban areas, it is also for the rural areas, it is also for properties and various other assets. It is generally seen क्योंकि स्टेट आपको टैक्सेस के ऊपर, प्रॉपर्टी टैक्स के ऊपर रियायत देता है, because the state gives you a certain amount of leverage or gives you a certain discount on offerings and on various other taxes. It is because of that reason many people name their assets to female members of of their family. तो महिलाओं के नाम पे प्रॉपर्टीज तब चढ़ रही हैं बिकॉज प्रॉपर्टी टैक्स इज लोअर फॉर फीमेल, or registration fee or stamp duty for females is lower for that reason. And this is something that we need to understand. Now, because the state takes up any initiative and creates a policy, and that policy has a positive repercussion, उस policy की वजह से अब लोग females के नाम पर property कर रहे हैं. Otherwise, it was the male members or the kartas of the household. Karta. You must have heard of this name or this term. हमारे तो कर्ता धर्ता आप हैं. कर्ता as a concept is the chief or the tribal chief, और उसके अंडर कर्ता होते थे जो कि एक फैमिली के चीफ होते थे. The ones who used to take decisions, hold the finances, hold the assets, and they used to take care of every individual within that family. तो ये होते थे कर्ता. मैं आपको ब्रॉड सेंस में बता रहा हूं. This concept exists even today. I don't know if you have heard of anyone, if you have, I really hope that you don't, but if you have heard of someone dying or someone who's died in your family or in your vicinity or anyone around you has seen some death happening, natural causes, simple death that happens, there is a ceremony called Pagdi ceremony or the Rasam Pagdi ceremony. This concept of Rasam Pagdi is basically the transference of Karta rights from one individual who has died. When the Karta of the household dies, he transfers, it is the society which transfers the rights of the Karta onto the shoulders of the other person. Generally, the eldest son. Now, he becomes the Karta. This transfer of Karta rights is through Rasam Pagdi. ये जो रसम है, ये जो ceremony है of Pagdi is basically transferring the Pagdi of the Karta of the family who has died to the next Karta. And you would see this as a matter of fact. It is never a case that you have female Kartas in the Rasam Pagdi. Never a case. Even if the girl in that household, the girl child in that household is the eldest kid, अगर लड़की सबसे बड़ी है ना तब भी उससे छोटे भाई को रसम पगड़ी के अंदर पगड़ी पहराई जाती. This you would think is coming from the ancient Hindu or ancient Indian texts or canonical texts. It is not. As a matter of fact, Hindu law, if you read it in detail, does not limit the rights of Karta to male members only. It allows for female members to be incorporated as a Karta. This is basically an incorporation because the Karta is the one who holds rights of taking decisions when it comes to Hindu undivided family. Hindu undivided family is basically a family which is not divided and has certain benefits when it comes to tax laws, when it comes to property rights, when it comes to transfer of property rights and holding of assets, etc., etc., etc. तो जब भी कमर्शियल लॉज या प्रॉपर्टी रिलेटेड लॉज से रिलेटेड कभी भी बात आती है और टैक्स रिलेटेड लॉज की बात आती है, HUF, यू वुड रीड दिस व्हेन यू आर फिलिंग अप फॉर्म्स. जब भी फॉर्म फिल अप करेंगे आप, आपको पता होगा HUF बोला जाता है. HUF is Hindu undivided family. The concept of Karta is not really limited to male members. It is actually extended to female members as well. In fact, it is said that even a mother, of course, the widowed mother can be the Karta of the household. It is considered that. In fact, a girl in the household can also be the Karta. It is not under certain conditions कि वो नहीं है, वो नहीं है, वो नहीं है. हाँ, of course, there are situations where it is said that if the male member who is supposed to be the Karta is not fit साइकोलॉजिकली या कह लीजिए उसका दिमागी संतुलन ठीक नहीं है, then female members are also given the chances and the opportunity to become a karta. So the options are open for females. That is one thing. Number two, the problem lies in how these social practices are perceived in real life, and that is where there is a lack of confidence on in any family on females, on girls towards decision making, and asset ownership is directly associated with that. ऑलराइट, सो इन सब चीजों को टारगेट करना होगा, इन सब चीजों को रिमूव करना होगा, इन प्रॉब्लम्स को सॉर्ट आउट करना होगा इफ वी वांट टू प्रोसीड फर्दर एज अ सोसाइटी. Now, moving on, as I've told you in the beginning itself, the first three topics that we have covered, we are covering these topics with respect to women and women related rights. Now we come to child marriage as a concept and child marriage as a phenomenon, particularly in major rural areas of the country. Now, a nationwide campaign against child marriage has been launched from Rajasthan itself by the Nobel Peace Laureate Kailash Satyarthi, just to remove this social evil. Now, Kailash Satyarthi's Children's Foundation, KSCF, will be the spearheading organization which will implement and launch this campaign. Now, as a part of the campaign, 70,000 women and girls led people in lighting lamps, torchlight processions, candlelight marches. 10,000 villages, 10,000 villages were covered, 6,015 villages by KSCF, and the rest were covered by government and various other agencies. It was basically outsourced as well, from over 500 districts in 26 states around the country, across the country. The campaign was launched with another Nobel Peace Laureate by the name Lema Boi. Go is in the epiglottis, uske baad Boi. Now, Lema Boi basically has co-launched this initiative along with Kailash Satyarthi. चाइल्ड मैरिज फ्री इंडिया कैंपेन, ये कैंपेन का नाम है, इसको याद रखिएगा. यूज इट इन योर आंसर्स. इट हैज थ्री मेजर ऑब्जेक्टिव्स. नंबर वन, strict implementation of the law with respect to child marriage prohibition act, then enhancing participation of children and women to make sure that no child is taken away from free education till the age of 18 years, and to provide safety to children against sexual exploitation, because many a times it is seen that the reason for child marriage, apart from the social stigma and various issues associated, is of course sexual exploitation. Various government agencies, including the RPF, Railway Protection Force, because many a times child brides are transported, let's call it transport, they are moved from one place to another through railways. Women Child Development Department across 14 states, state child protection authorities, state legal service authorities based on the NALSA Act, Anganwadis, district administration, several other state governments, they have joined the campaign. It is going to be a nationwide campaign where we are going to curb the numbers when it comes to child marriages. All right, just give me a couple of seconds, guys, please. Just a couple of seconds. By that time, you can also tell me in the chat section if I'm audible and visible. सब कुछ सही चल रहा है तो please बता दीजिएगा. And of course, before we proceed further, just to give you a broad overview of all the efforts and initiatives that Shriram Giles brings to you guys on an academy platform. You have the access to 25% flat discount if you use this referral code, that is SRIRAMS. You have to remember this referral code, Shriram's, SRIRAMS. In fact, if you use this referral code, you can avail 25% discount, be it the geography optional. Geography optional is being offered. Then you have foundation batch where prelims, mains, interviews, every single aspect of your examination is being covered. सारे aspects cover हो रहे हैं and it has already started. If you follow, new batches are also running. Make sure to check that out on Unacademy as well. Also, you have the anthropology optional now available on Unacademy platform. And yes, you have other optional subjects available. मैं public administration ले रहा हूँ and you have sociology, PSIR, economics, and history, and of course anthropology and geography as well with respect to the number of optionals. So we are offering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 optionals, which is a very good number. You will have access to all these optional subject courses on Unacademy platform. Every single course that Sriram IAS brings for you guys is available, and all you have to do is, of course, use the referral code or SRIRAMS. Make sure to do that. आपका फाउंडेशन बैच, आपका geography optional, आपका foundation batch, then you have anthropology optional, then you have various other options. Make sure to go and check that out. All right. And if you have not yet followed me on Unacademy, Unacademy की वेबसाइट खोलिएगा और वहां पर UPSC GS एंड UPSC ऑप्शनल अगर आप गोल्स डाल के सर्च करते हैं एडुकेटर्स में, you will find Shriram sir's profile, you will find my profile. My name is Sanat Bhardwaj. You will find these profiles. You should follow these profiles. If you notice in the video's description, you will find the link. थोड़ा सा नीचे जाएंगे ना वीडियो की डिस्क्रिप्शन के अंदर आपको लिंक्स मिल जाएंगे श्रीराम सर की प्रोफाइल के भी, मेरी प्रोफाइल के भी, and all the special classes that we have taken, all the important and relevant plus courses that we are offering on Unacademy platform. Also remember one phone number, and that phone number is for all other queries 8585858585. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Remember this phone number. All right. चलो. Now, as far as the data is concerned, क्योंकि अपने को data भी चाहिए होता है जब मेंस के आंसर लिखते हैं. Child marriages in India, they are usually referred to a social phenomena where you have a younger person being married to an adult. Generally, it is an adult, but child marriage के अंदर it may or may not be adult always. So usually a girl below the age of 15 years is married to an adult man. Or the second form is where the parents of two children, a girl and a boy, arrange a future marriage. So both these situations can happen. In practice, the individuals do not meet one another until they have reached the marriageable age. That is the practice कि वो अपने अपने घर में रहते हैं. When the wedding ceremony is performed, when they reach the legal marriageable age, child marriage prevalence is generally defined as the percentage of women which is 20 to 24 years old who were married or in union before the 18 years of age. So it is only after coming of age, only after 18 years of age, that we actually get the data. We get the data that I was married before 18 years of age. My marriage happened at 14 years of age. My marriage happened at 12 years of age, 8 years of age, 10 years of age. So हम 10 साल 18 साल से नीचे 12 साल 13 साल 14 साल 16 साल की उम्र के बच्चियों का जो विवाह करते हैं, when we are marrying them to either an adult man or to a boy who's also a young person, उसके साथ भी शादी करते हैं. So these are two different child marriages that are happening in this country. And now, since more and more awareness has happened, so there is an instance where once marriage happens, these two individuals live their life in their own households. And then when they come of age, when they reach the marriageable age, they are made to live together. As per the law, the marriageable age for men is 21 years and 18 years for females. Right now, there is a push to change the marriageable age. In fact, to bring both of these marriageable ages at par, 18 साल से बढ़ाकर 21 साल कर देनी चाहिए. मैं तो कहता हूं कि 21 से भी थोड़ा सा बढ़ा देनी चाहिए, 24-25 कर देनी चाहिए. बिकॉज इफ यू हैव द लीगल एज टू ड्रिंक अल्कोहल एट 25 years and you have marriageable age at 21 years, that means you are considering people to be more mature at 21 when it comes to choosing their life partner, rather than compared to choosing the beverage that they want to drink, whether or not alcoholic. तो अगर कोई शराब पीना चाहता है तो उसकी समझ आपकी 25 साल की उम्र में आएगी, लेकिन शादी जो है वो बहुत छोटी मोटी सी बात है, तो उसको 21 और 18 साल की उम्र में अलाउ कर देना चाहिए. दिस इज व्हाई दिस लॉ इज फ्लॉड on the core, in the core of at the very basic, it is flawed to the basis, on the basis of logic itself. मतलब आपको यही बेसिक चीज जो मैं बोल रहा हूँ, इसी चीज को सोचते समझने में ही पता चल जाएगा दैट इट इज अ मेजर प्रॉब्लम. Now, girl children in rural areas, they are more affected as compared to urban areas. Urban areas में ये instances, ये incidents बहुत limited है. Rural areas में थोड़े ज्यादा है. It is estimated to have, India is estimated to have 24 million child brides, which means around 2.4 crore girls who have been child brides. They have come of age, they have reported the data. 40% of the world's 60 million child marriages, they happen in India according to NFHS. National Family Health Survey बताते हैं that we have 40% of world's child marriages happening in India. The entire world, 40% India में हो रही है. India has the 14th highest rate of child marriages in the world according to ICRW, International Center for Research on Women. Marriage systems, practices, they vary according to the region that you belong to, the caste, and of course the tribe that you belong to. सो सिस्टम प्रोसेस वो बदल सकता है, बट शादियां जल्दी हो रही है, ये एक फैक्ट. रेट्स ऑफ चाइल्ड मैरिजेस आर हायर इन द नॉर्थ वेस्ट पार्ट ऑफ द कंट्री वेयर राजस्थान इज, लोअर इन द साउथ ईस्ट पार्ट ऑफ द कंट्री where you have Tamil Nadu, you have Andhra Pradesh. In such areas, you have very less numbers and very less figures. States where high rates exist, for example, 50% and above, they are Bihar, Rajasthan, Jharkhand, UP, West Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka. So these are the major regions in the country where child marriages are happening. Rajasthan has the highest incidence of child marriages, both be it boys where it is 8.6% and girls which is 8.3% according to the data of 2011 census. 2011 के बाद का सेंसस अभी डेटा आया नहीं है. So we are awaiting that. Just a second, guys. Just need a couple of seconds. Can you guys let me know in the chat section if I'm audible and visible? Everyone? अगर अभी तक आपने लाइक नहीं की है वीडियो तो प्लीज मेक श्योर दैट यू हैव लाइक द वीडियो. Am I audible? Krishna ji, Vipin? All okay? Sure. Just give me a second, no? Please. Just give me a couple of seconds. चलिए, let's continue. Now, according to the fourth National Family Health Survey, this data was collected in 2015-16. 16.2% of the girls aged between 15 to 19 years, they were married before the age of 18 years. Rajasthan के अंदर ही. In fact, Rajasthan is the leading state in this matter. Bihar, 70% of the women in their early 20s reported that they were married before they have been married by the age of 18, which is basically the bare minimum age. According to DLHS data, around 48% of married women in their 20, 22 years or 24 years of age group, they got married before 18 years in rural areas compared to 29% in urban areas. Let me explain this data to you guys. Number one data point, the National Family Health Survey, fourth. 2015-16 का डेटा है, पुराना है, but it is still relevant. It is important for us. Why? Because the latest figures are yet to come up based on the latest survey and the latest census. Now, as far as the last data set of NFHS is concerned, 16.2% of the girls जो 15 से 19 साल की उम्र के बीच की थी, उसमें से 16% गर्ल्स जो है इंडिया के अंदर बात हो रही है, देवर पर्टिकुलरली राजस्थान की, माना गया है कि उनकी शादी 18 साल से कम उम्र में हो गई थी, with variation of course across various districts. In Bihar, 70% of women not really rape, हम उसको रेप नहीं कहेंगे कृष्णा जी, it will not be called as rape particularly, क्योंकि रेप की कैटेगरी मैंने आपको इसीलिए बताया, मेक श्योर दैट यू रीड सेक्शन 376 ऑफ इंडियन पीनल कोड, आईपीसी का सेक्शन 376 पढ़ेंगे तो आपको उसमें रेप का कॉन्सेप्ट समझ में आएगा. दिस इज अ ब्रॉडर सोशल इशू बिकॉज इट इज नॉट अबाउट द कोहैबिटेशन. जिस चीज को आप कह रहे हैं वो तब होता है जब कोहैबिटेशन होती है. It is only to the point where you have adult men being married to young child or a young girl. अगर बच्चियों के साथ बड़े लोग, बड़े आदमियों की शादी हो रही है, 18 साल से ऊपर की उम्र के आदमी की शादी हो रही है, that can be considered, if someone puts up a complaint, that can be considered as a crime of child rape. Again, a special class of rape itself. सही कह रहे हैं उस पॉइंट तक, बट दैट इज नॉट ऑल व्हाट चाइल्ड मैरिज इज ऑल अबाउट. ये सिर्फ और सिर्फ चाइल्ड मैरिज का एक कंपोनेंट है. फॉर एग्जांपल, दूसरा कंपोनेंट, जब दोनों ही बच्चे जवान हैं, दे आर नॉट 18 and 21 years of age. अगर लड़की 18 साल से कम है, लड़का 21 साल की उम्र से कम है, वहां पर चाइल्ड मैरिज हो रही है, वहां पर भी तो चाइल्ड मैरिज हो रही है. दैट अगेन इज नॉट गोइंग टू बी कंसिडर्ड एज चाइल्ड रेप. वहां पर रेप का कॉन्सेप्ट तब आएगा अगर कोई कंप्लेंट एज सच पुट अप की जाती है. अदरवाइज इट इज सीन दैट इन प्रैक्टिस दीज इंडिविजुअल, द बॉय एंड द गर्ल, इनकी शादी करवाकर इनको अपने अपने घर में रखा जाता है अलग. वंस दे रीच द मैरिजेबल एज, जब वो 18 साल से ऊपर और 21 साल से ऊपर हो जाते हैं, इट इज एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम दे आर मेड टू लिव टुगेदर. बट अगेन, the problem of child marriage, even if it is the second way, ये चाहे दूसरा तरीका जिस तरीके के बारे में मैं बोल रहा हूँ, it has a very negative impact on the psychology and of course the analysis that any individual has with respect to society. The way one has to live their lives, their rights as a child, उनके child rights infringe होते हैं. They have to have access to free and compulsory education to a certain age, and then of course the state will take care of the rest of the responsibilities and the society takes care of the rest of the responsibilities. वो चीज बदल जाती है इंसान के लिए, and that is why child marriages in any form, चाहे वो adult being married to a young girl or two young boy and a young girl, they are getting married. You are right in that sense. It is considerably child rape, but then it is a limited एंगल. और हम इस मुद्दे को सिर्फ चाइल्ड रेप से लिंक करके नहीं देख सकते हैं, इसके अंदर एक ब्रॉडर प्रॉब्लम छिपा हुआ है. आई एम आस्किंग यू टू लुक एट द बिगर पिक्चर है. आप लिमिटेड पिक्चर पे नहीं, चाइल्ड रेप तो सर्टनली है, बट व्हाट आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट इज द बिगर पिक्चर हियर इज मोर ऑफ the social aspects and more of the phenomena which lead to these situations. वो यहां तक पहुंचती कैसे है परेशानी, इन सब चीजों को हमें टारगेट कर. Over the past 15 years, child marriage has declined by just 11%, which is less than 1% per year. मतलब हर साल सिर्फ और सिर्फ 8% के आसपास से हम नंबर ऑफ चाइल्ड मैरिजेस को रोक पा रहे हैं. What is the cause of child marriage? Number one, gender inequality. And gender inequality is a very broad term. इसके अंदर declining sex ratio, sex selective abortions, and various other aspects are incorporated. The kind of life that is ensured for the females in the society also enhances gender inequality. Economic disconsiderations, for example, leeway too large dowry. भाई किसी के पास पैसे की कमी हो रही है तो वो अपने लड़के को बेच देते हैं और दहेज ले लेते हैं, डाउरी ले लेते हैं. जब आप किसी से कोई चीज ले रहे हो, पैसा ले रहे हो, तो उसको कोई चीज देते हो तो कोई चीज बेचते ही तो. दैट इज डाउरी इज नॉट डिमीनिंग द एग्जिस्टेंस ऑफ गर्ल चाइल्ड. कि बेटी है तो दहेज देना पड़ेगा. इट इज मोर और लेस द बॉयज who are being sold in marriages. लड़कों के दाम लग रहे हैं. लड़के ने यूपीएससी निकाला, उसका दाम बढ़ गया. लड़के ने 10वीं में अच्छे नंबर लिए, उसका दाम बढ़ गया. लड़के ने 12वीं में अच्छे नंबर लिए, उसका दाम बढ़ गया. वी आर बेसिकली सेलिंग ऑफ आवर बॉयज, right? It is to be considered in this angle as well. Further, there are certain social norms which are followed, and when they are followed, उसकी वजह से problems arise हो जाती. Perceived low status of girls. Why? Because of various social taboos they exist around the existence of a girl child. For example, menstruation. The ill-conceived notion of impurity of a girl or of a female when she is menstruating, when she is going through her menstrual cycle, is a wrong notion, has no roots whatsoever in religion or in social phenomena. It is something that has cropped up the social spheres in the recent past only. And you can check the you can check the religious scriptures for that as well, in the correct, in the correct sequence or in the correct delineations. Now, poverty again, because they cannot wait for the marriageable age. They want them to get settled when they are young. Lack of education, safety concerns about girl child. And this was in fact a major problem when it was the colonial rule, and even before the colonial rule, the Mughal rule. Many a times it was seen that during this medieval period, we have never called our medieval ages as dark ages, just like the West. In the West, they call their medieval period as dark ages. हम अगर उस टाइम पीरियड की बात करें जो कि इफेक्टिवली डार्क एज रहा है फॉर द इंडियन सोसाइटी, many social evils that we are trying to eradicate now, they had cropped up because of the ill-conceived, illegitimate activities of the state and statesmen. होता क्या था? Men in power, be it the rulers of that time or the chieftains, the tribal chief of that time, or the individuals who were the bigger landlords of that time, कभी कभी शादियों में घुसकर ऐसे ही जिसका मन चाहा उसकी लड़की को उठाकर ले जाते. There was always a safety concern for girl children. Particularly if the girl was married, it was considered that it would reduce the concerns of safety for that girl. And that is why, as quickly as possible, girls were getting married. जितना जल्दी हो सके. Otherwise, as such, if you would look at scriptures, if you would look at the ancient history, there is very limited scope of child marriage. It is not a social practice from ancient India. It is something that cropped up, that came into being during the medieval age. And that is why even in India, I think that we should consider medieval period as dark ages as well. Further, there is a sense of control over sexuality and chastity. Chastity hota hai brahmacharya, chastity of young bride. Before she comes of age, it is very improbable that she would have, physical relationships with anyone. And right at that point, when she becomes sexually aware, it is better to marry her off. That was the social phenomena, that was the social concept, finding the basic premise behind child marriages. Today, that is not the case. Today, you have a much more evolved society, a much more open and a much more liberal society. Further, of course, the issues with respect to honor killings are also existent. Now, just a second, guys. What are the challenges when it comes to removing this social malice from Indian society? Child marriage is basically a violation of human rights as well as dignity. The way human life is revered and valued through UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and of course the convention as well, it basically negatively influences the right to education of the child, the health and protection of the child. It has a negative impact not just on the girl, which is of course direct impact, but also her family and the community at large, because the value of girl child is now considered to be less, or lesser than, not just less, lesser than. Your comparative analysis. Now, this social evil propels an unending list of crimes against children, against our daughters, causes of HIV/AIDS. उनको थोड़ा सा push मिल जाता है. Major other challenges. Child marriages have negative impact on Indian economy as well, and it also increases the chances of intergenerational cycle of poverty. ये intergenerational cycle of poverty क्या कहता है? अगर फादर पुअर हैं तो उनका बच्चा भी पुअर होगा, अगर बच्चा पुअर है तो उसका बच्चा भी पुअर होगा. दिस इज द इंटरजेनरेशनल साइकिल ऑफ पॉवर्टी, वेयर नोबडी इज एबल टू डाइग्रेस फ्रॉम दिस विशियस साइकिल ऑफ पॉवर्टी. अगर वो डाइग्रेस करके उस साइकिल ऑफ पॉवर्टी, इंटरजेनरेशनल साइकिल ऑफ पॉवर्टी से मूव अवे हो जाते हैं, इफ देयर इज हायर मोबिलिटी, इट इज कॉल्ड हायर mobility out of this intergenerational cycle. If that was a possibility, then Indian economy would have impacted in a positive manner. But वो नहीं है. होता क्या है कि जहां पेड़ है ना, फल उससे बहुत ज्यादा दूर नहीं गिरता, उसी के आसपास गिरता. The way society was run when it was the previous generation, it has an impact on the next generation. Girls and boys married as children, they are more likely to lack skills, social skills, educational skills, knowledge, job prospects limited hai, which is needed to lift their families out of poverty, to contribute to the nation's building, contribute to socio-economic growth of the country. Very limited scope. Lack of feminist law making, number one, lack of policy making, and of course, number two, lack of implementation of extant legal provisions that even exist right now. जो अभी भी exist कर रही है, उनकी सही implementation नहीं हो रही. Rural poverty basically implies lack of economic benefits which are coming up because of educating girls. अगर आप महिलाओं को, लड़कियों को पढ़ाते हैं, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, you educate a boy, you are educating one individual. If you educate a girl, you are educating her entire family. It is perceived in that sense that the repercussions or the ripple effect of investing in girl education is far more and far more advanced when it comes to, as a comparison to, male education. So we do not have feminist law making, decision making के realms में you have lack of female participation or women participation. Further, you have lack of implementation strategies and approaches when it comes to the already existing policies. वो बदल नहीं रही, right? Low levels of literacy means that people do not indulge in family planning. They have very limited aspects when it comes to the participation in decision making. डिसीजन मेकिंग के अंदर पार्टिसिपेशन वाला मुद्दा हमने अभी अबॉर्शन राइट से रिलेटेड टॉपिक के अंदर भी देखा था, लाइव स्टॉक फार्मिंग से रिलेटेड भी देखा, है ना? चलो, व्हाट इज द लेजिस्लेटिव फ्रेमवर्क? Legislative framework includes the 1929 Child Marriage Restraint Act, which is also known as the Sharda Act. It had fixed the ages of marriage of girls at 14 years, boys at 18 years. Then you have PCP-NDT, PCP-NDT, preconception, before the conception of the child, prenatal, before the birth of the child, Diagnostic Techniques Act of 1994. ये बेसिकली सेक्स डिटर्मिनेशन ऑफ द फीटस, ये लड़का है या लड़की. आई डोंट नो इफ यू रिमेंबर, देयर वाज दिस entire TV series or a TV show था, Nana is this Lado, if you remember, based on sex determination, based on the birth of female child, the sex determination of the fetus leading to female feticide basically is prohibited under the 1994 Act, which is the preconception. Preconception वाला फेज जो है वो कंसेप्शन से पहले का फेज है, where the the embryo basically becomes the child, वो जो fetus की शेप लेता है उससे पहले का फेज है जहां पर फर्टिलाइजेशन नहीं हो रहा है. तो प्री कंसेप्शन एंड उससे आगे नेटल, विच इज बेसिकली द डिलीवरी फेज, उस फेज तक, विच इज द प्री डिलीवरी फेज और ड्यूरिंग द प्रेगनेंसी फेज, दैट इज नोन एज द प्री नेटल फेज. तो प्री कंसेप्शन एंड प्री नेटल फेज में डायग्नोस्टिक टेक्निक्स को कैसे यूज करना है उस पर्टिकुलर प्रोसेस में, एंड पर्टिकुलरली प्रोहिबिटिंग सेक्सुअल डिटर्मिनेशन और सेक्स और जेंडर डिटर्मिनेशन ऑफ द fetus, that is basically prohibited through this act. Then you have the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act as amended to date 2006. Then there is the legal age for marriage in India. ये कहीं पर लिखा नहीं हुआ है किसी लॉ के अंदर. एज ऑफ मेच्योरिटी is taken care of by the Indian Majority Act. The Indian Majority Act considers that everybody who is now above the age of 18 years will be considered as a major. But when it comes to marriage, which is a part of personal law, for Hindus who are Hindus, according to the constitution, everybody who is not a Parsi, who is not a Muslim, who is not a Christian is a Hindu. That means a Jain, a Buddhist, basically a Sikh and a Hindu. Four of these individuals, they will be considered as Hindus. For them, the age of consent or the age of marriage is 18 years and 21 years for the boy. Further, if you talk about Muslim law considers puberty as the watershed event when it comes to the age of maturity or the majority, कि भाई अब मेजर हो गए. तो puberty के बाद शादी अलाउ की जाती, which is around 13 to 14 years of age or 12 years of age. So there is a discrepancy when it comes to legal age for marriage. That is something which is being targeted through the Uniform Civil Code, which brings us to the point where whether you can prohibit or where you can restrain people from going towards child marriages using the Uniform Civil Code. क्या Uniform Civil Code का फायदा होगा या नहीं होगा? It is considered that as a matter of practice in the rest of the world, Uniform Civil Code has a positive impact on the women related rights. You talk about the the Western countries, which are Muslim countries, where you have radical Islamist state taking care of the society. If you have uniform civil code, it is seen that women's rights are further and strongly protected. It has a positive impact on female rights. Further, full-time child marriage prohibition officers, they have been appointed. Every single state has these officers and they are supposed to police instances of child marriages. अब तो बहुत सारी advertisements भी आ गई हैं with respect to this particular instance. Child marriage, of course, is punishable by imprisonment. You have imprisonment up to 2 years. 2 साल तक की सजा हो सकती है. You can be given a fine only, or a fine can be up to 1 lakh rupees, or both, which means either 2 years of jail or up to 2 years. It can be 1 day till 2 years, for example. Acha, फिर you have fine also. You can have up to 1 lakh rupees. So it is either no fine or maximum of 1 lakh rupees fine, or both these can be applied. Section 10 of the Child Marriage Act says that these penalties are extended to anyone who performs, conducts, directs, or abets a child marriage, unless he can prove that he had reason to believe that the marriage was no child marriage. मतलब क्या है कि legal age for marriage in India 22-24. I would say बिल्कुल सही है, जेन्युइन है. 22, 23, 24 मिनिमम एज होनी चाहिए, बट एक्चुअली दी गुड एज टू गेट मैरिड इज 25 के आसपास, 25 के आसपास सही एज रहती है शादी करने की, और उससे कम थोड़ा जल्दी हो जाता है. बिकॉज Krishnaji, the thing is that everybody has to get settled first. They have to be earning first to understand the world in a much deeper way. वो जब तक नहीं होता है तब तक शादी करना is a very futile exercise. And if you are having 25 years of age for drinking alcohol, ये लीगल ड्रिंकिंग एज है. मतलब शराब आप 25 साल की उम्र के बाद पिएंगे, लेकिन शादी अगर आप पहले कर लेंगे, that basically demeans the entire institution of marriage. Acha. Number 2, we as if you consider section 10 of the act, what does it say? It basically does not limit the punishment only to the parents. Anyone who performs, anyone who helps, anyone who says कि इसकी शादी करवा दो, anyone who conducts the entire process or helps in the process, unless and until वो ये प्रूव कर दें कि भाई उनको लगता था कि 18-19 साल के बच्चे हैं, 18 साल की लड़की है, 21 साल का लड़का, unless and until उनको ऐसा लगता हो और वो ये प्रूव कर दें, तब तो नहीं. लेकिन otherwise if they knew that it was a child marriage and they helped in any form whatsoever, वो भी सजा के हकदार हैं. If the child herself contracts for a child marriage under section 11, any parent or a guardian who actively supports the marriage or negligently fails to prevent it, punishable है by way of imprisonment or a fine. मतलब अगर वो ये कहें कि हमें तो बेटी ने ही कहा था कि शादी कर दो, भाई बेटी 18 साल से ऊपर की नहीं है, अकॉर्डिंग टू इंडियन मेजोरिटी एक्ट उसकी कंसेंट मायने नहीं रखती है. वो कल को बदल भी जाएगी तो उसको कोई बेसिकली लीगल लकूना नहीं है जो उसको रोक सके कि वो बदल नहीं सकती है. एंड दैट इज द प्रॉब्लम. मेनी पेरेंट्स दे यूज फीमेल चाइल्ड एज द रीजन, as using their consent of their daughters, right? That is a major concern. Now this is still punishable. Parents are still punishable. So what can we do? If you talk about the sustainable development goals, child marriage is included at the global scale, and we, for instance, are 40% of child marriages in the world. The Ministry of Women and Child Development, it supports a child helpline toll-free number, which is 1098. You can reach out to children in distress, and of course, you can enhance awareness. For me, the kind of question that comes up is of two-pronged approaches. One, of course, is GS2 related, one is GS4 related. age of consent is not just age of consent is not just a function of the maturity of an individual, but also a socio-political, also of also of socio-political impact that the individual has on the society at large. Comment. All right, चलिए दूसरा क्वेश्चन. This one is not related to age of consent. ये questions note down कर लीजिएगा अपनी आंसर राइटिंग प्रैक्टिस के अंदर इनको incorporate कर लीजिएगा. It will benefit you guys. Okay. चलो. Let's let's. This is related to GS2. Let's write down a question with respect to GS4. Discuss the role of society in influencing the reduced instances of child marriages in India. Question mark. 20 odd marks, 15, 20 marks, 200, 250 words. All right. राधे राधे रमेश जी, वेलकम टू द क्लास. एंड आप थोड़ा सा लेट हुए क्लास में, कोई बात नहीं. इस क्लास को आप रिकॉर्डेड फॉर्मेट में देख लीजिएगा. इनिशियल फेज में थोड़ा सा टेक्निकल ग्लिचेस थे तो थोड़ा आपको फास्ट फॉरवर्ड करना पड़ेगा. बट अदरवाइज मेक श्योर टू फॉलो दीज क्लासेस. दीज आर वीकेंड क्लासेस हैपनिंग एवरी सैटरडे एंड संडे. Every Saturday and Sunday for 2.5 hours we sit down for you guys for Mission Mains 2023. Right? Now it is not just for those students who are appearing in mains this year, it is also for those students who are wanting to appear next year. For all of them as well, this is a relevant and important session. ठीक है जी. तो इसको सिर्फ इतना ही सोच के मत कीजिए. ठीक है जी. अच्छा. Apart from that, you also have optional subject courses that are being run on Unacademy platform. Sociology, public administration, I take, then PSIR, economics, history. आपका public administration मैं ही लेता हूँ. अच्छा, उसके बाद you have the foundation course where prelims, mains and interviews, every single aspect of the syllabus, every single aspect of the exam of UPSC Civil Services examination is considered and उसको cover करवाया जा रहा है in a very holistic manner. Every single faculty, including Sriram sir and Jwala sir and Chilian sir, Sivasankari ma'am, K. Shivesh sir, every individual member of the team of faculties that works फॉर यू गाइज. हम लोग श्रीराम आईएएस से आपकी तरफ आए हुए हैं ऑन अनअकैडमी प्लेटफॉर्म. मेक श्योर टू फॉलो अस ऑल. Yes, if you want to avail any of the courses, then you should use this referral code of SRIRAMS, that is Srirams. All right. Then you of course have geography optional and anthropology optional as well. So you have multiple optional subjects. Now, before we end this session, let me also share the phone numbers for you guys so that आपको अगर कोई query है तो आप वहां पर पूछ सकते हैं 8585858585 1 2 3 4 5. ऑलराइट, चलिए आज अभी फिलहाल इस सेशन में इतना ही. आई विल सी यू गाइज इन द नेक्स्ट सेशन with more information relating to mains, more topics being discussed in detail with certain questions as well in the class. Till then, मुझे दीजिए इजाजत. मैं सनातन भारद्वाज आप सभी का शुक्रिया अदा करता हूं for attending this session till the end. Thank you. Take care. God bless you all. Bye bye. Yes, of course. Keep calm and stay tuned to Sriram IAS.